Hey everyone, it's Saoirse, and today we're going to talk about a really exciting book. And if you are not into biology and don't want to hear terms that you would see in a biology book, if you shy away from these things, then this won't be for you. This book is called Vagina Obscura, and this is by Rachel E. Gross. It was published in 2022. I first saw this book, I bought it at the Ripped Bodice bookstore in Brooklyn, New York. And this is a wonderful bookstore that has all kinds of romance, and then also a lot of like feminism books and books about sexuality. And so I saw that and I was like, oh, sign me up, because I really enjoyed The Body by Bill Bryson and felt like I learned so much about my own physical form that I never knew before. I actually never took an anatomy class in school. It wasn't required, so I took biology and chemistry and never anatomy. And we all know that like our anatomy is just not really talked about, and and we'll see in this book that people throughout history have studied male anatomy so much because it's real exterior and a lot easier to study, and also because sexism and misogyny. So let's read the back. A new generation of researchers is turning its gaze to the organs traditionally bound up in baby making, the uterus, ovaries, and vagina, and illuminating them as part of a dynamic, resilient, and ever-changing whole. Welcome to Vagina Obscura, an odyssey into a woman's body from a fresh perspective. Given unparalleled access to labs and the latest research, journalist Rachel E. Gross takes readers on a scientific journey to the center of a wondrous world where the uterus regrows itself, ovaries pump out fresh eggs, and the clitoris pulses beneath the surface like a shimmering pyramid of nerves. Insights into the vaginal microbiome, ovarian stem cells, and the biology of menstruation mean a better understanding of all bodies. By turns funny, lyrical, incisive, and shocking, Vagina Obscura is a powerful testament to how the landscape of human knowledge can be rewritten to better serve everyone. And I just want to say right now, let's take bets on if they demonetize this video because I'm using real terms and words and not censoring it. So anyway, I want to mention at the top, like it says a woman's body here, and I know will be readers who will be hesitant to pick this up because they're worried that it's too binary. And the author does mention that right at the top and says that like she'll be inclusive, but the word woman gets used a lot. And that's a lot of it is because that's what medical texts are written like throughout history, and history was not very inclusive of trans women and intersex individuals. And so, yeah, she mentions that, and there is a lot about trans women and intersex people at the end of the book. There's a whole chapter. So don't shy away from it. I would recommend you still pick it up. But I know it can be triggering and hard if you don't feel represented in a book about the anatomy that you personally possess, but you don't identify as a woman. So, and there's obviously there's also stuff about trans men. So, let's get into this. In the introduction, why we have to learn. There comes a time in every woman's life when her body bumps up against the limits of human knowledge. In that moment, she sees herself as medicine has seen her, a mystery, an enigma, a black box that for some reason no one has managed to get inside. Those that I talked to for this book were all made to feel that they alone had a complicated, unruly body. They began to suspect, or were outright told, that somehow it was their fault. They should be ashamed, should lie down and think about what they'd done. So this is why, to me, we have to learn. We have to be taught about our bodies, because it is crazy to me that in this era there's still so much shame, that we're still thinking about these parts as as shameful, mysterious, dirty. There's just so many negative associations that are so unfair and untrue, and a lot of it is because there is a lack of knowledge. So I'm glad that this book exists and that there are other books like it. Most of our scientific understanding of this realm is built off of the study of male bodies. It was only in 1993, following the women's health movement, that a federal mandate required researchers to include women and minorities in clinical research. 1993. The year before I was born. That's when there was finally a federal mandate. They were just going around studying male bodies and being like, yep, that applies to everybody, I guess. So, unbelievable. As a result, there are parts of your own body less known than the bottom of the ocean or the surface of Mars. Most researchers I talked to blamed this dearth of knowledge on the black box problem. The female body is considered more complex, more obscure, with much of its plumbing tucked up inside. To get inside it, we've needed high-tech imaging tools that have only come around in recent decades. When I heard these answers, I couldn't help thinking of what science has done in the 21st century. Put a rover on Mars, made a 3-parent baby, built an artificial sheep uterus, and we couldn't figure out the composition of vaginal mucus? Yeah, it almost makes you think it's because they weren't trying. Around 400 BCE, Hippocrates deemed the male and female genitals, and this is a word I cannot read, it means the shame parts, and is a reference to Aidos, blushing goddess of shame and modesty. The study of sexuality, in other words, was tinged in shame from the beginning, but it was women to whom the shame stuck. So yeah, shame is tied up in all of this and is a big reason why we're not taught this knowledge, why we don't seek this knowledge. And again, it just blows my mind that that is still an issue. I mean, thousands of years later. What? Yeah, okay. It's hard not to be, like, upset while reading this, but also I was very fascinated. Like, the first couple chapters, I was reading it like it was a murder mystery. I was like, what is gonna happen? Which is how I read The Body, too. I just couldn't believe all this stuff that I was learning. The original anatomists weren't interested in the clitoris. The penis was much more interesting. It was bigger, and you didn't have to wear your spectacles to see it. That kind of says it all. And this is so fascinating to me. This was a paradigm shift. At the time, many medical textbooks still referred to the glans as if it were the full organ. In reality, O'Connell wrote, the glans is a small button-like extension of the body of the clitoris, similar to the head of the penis. The full clitoris was 10 times the size most people thought it was, and shaped like a mountain of erectile tissue, rather than what its Greek name suggested, Little Hill. More than that, it was intimately connected to all the organs around it. That is so cool. And she goes into detail about, you know, how that works with orgasm, how it's connected to everything. And so she says there's no, like, region, like, that is the G spot, that's, like, the spot is not a real thing, but it's that the clitoris, the internal part of it is just, like, wrapped all up in everything, and that is the reason for orgasm. It's so interesting. And then she talks about how there was so much shame put on women who couldn't orgasm just from penetration. And she's like, there's no such thing as a vaginal orgasm, and in the way that these people were saying that there was. Like, this is the way that you have to be a good wife, and it's the only way you can conceive babies and all this stuff. Like it was just hugely shameful if you couldn't finish that way. And she's like, no, actually all orgasms come from the clitoris. You're welcome. Darwin. So we learn a lot about how, like, most men were just insufferable misogynists, including Darwin. Darwin, a product and pillar of an earlier time, disagreed. To him, a woman was meant to be, as he had once written in his journal as a young man contemplating marriage, a nice, soft wife, and an object to be beloved and played with. Better than a dog, anyhow. She should also, importantly, have money. Just gross. Okay, this was interesting. There's a lot about animals in here too. The different fascinating reproductive structures going on in animals and their sexual behaviors. So they're dissecting dolphin vaginas. We kept making these dissections looking at vaginas, and I'm looking at this enormous clitoris, she says. It makes perfect sense to her that a dolphin would have a well-developed clitoris. They're known for mating year-round for reasons like pleasure and social bonding, and have been seen masturbating by rubbing against things like sand, other dolphins, and even eels. I don't know what kind of reaction you had to that information. Um, Obviously the eels are not consenting, but that image, like, I was like, what? On eels? Dolphins are wild. So, yeah, I don't know. What did you think of that? Just a fact that I did not expect to ever hear. So let's see. We get a lot of interesting history. There's very many stories throughout this book describing the history of gynecology. And a lot of it is really, I guess unsurprisingly, very bleak. When we think about the advancements of gynecology and obstetrics, we cannot separate it from slavery and from enslaved women. For this work, she suggested Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha be named the mothers of gynecology. So those were 3 enslaved women who were like forced into helping this crazy guy do his experiments on women, his procedures on them, and they learned so much about gynecology and how to help women that they're now getting this name, the Mothers of Gynecology, and that's a wonderful legacy because they went through a lot of horrors, as you can imagine, and one of the results being like that they didn't even get credited for all of this incredible work that they did. So yeah, there's a lot of sad stories like that in here. Oh, I bet you've heard this fact before. I've always found this interesting. 20 weeks into gestation, an infant floating in the womb is revved up and ready to go, her ovaries bursting with as many eggs as she will ever have, 6 to 7 million. That means that at one point her mother carried not only the seeds of her daughter, but also her grandchildren, 3 generations in one body. And I mean, that's cool, but it also like really freaks me out. I don't want kids, so I'm glad that this book didn't really focus on childbearing, on fertility as much as it could have. The first couple chapters, like, it was all about like desire, and that was very interesting to me. So you get, can I tell you the chapter titles? Do we have a, yeah. So desire is glans clitoris, wholeness is internal clitoris, resilience is vagina, protection vaginal microbiome, creation egg cell, power ovaries, regeneration uterus, and beauty neovagina. So I didn't feel like, oh, I can't stand reading about, you know, having babies and how we should all have babies. Like, it didn't feel like that at all because, yeah, I just can't relate to that desire. This part made me go, like, humans will really try anything. There was this experiment cutting the spermatic duct in male rats. It seemed to trigger an increase in these hormone-producing cells and a subsequent increase in sexual activity. Lethargic, skinny, listless rats gained weight, developed glossy fur, and became sexual athletes. Some decrepit animals now had intercourse as many as 19 times per day. The same thing, he reasoned, could restore youthfulness in aging men. Essentially a one-sided vasectomy that he believed would cause sperm-producing cells to shrivel up and the hormone-producing ones to proliferate. And then it says, don't worry, ladies, there was a version for you too. The female equivalent was a shot of low-dose x-rays to the ovaries. Similarly, it promised to kill off germ cells and lead to the proliferation of hormone-producing cells instead. ovary zapping and procedures like it, some of which involved grafting part of a monkey ovary onto a woman, promised to convert grandmothers into debutantes. Wow, science and history are truly wild. Oh, this was interesting. The art of growing and then sloughing off the entire uterine lining is a rare quality thought throughout the animal kingdom, limited to a handful of primates, 4 species of bats, and a couple shrews. So we're the only ones who get a period. Humans, handful of primates, 4 species of bats, a couple of shrews. Aren't we lucky? Aren't we so lucky that we have to do this every month? I mean, yeah, that was a weird fact. Didn't see that one coming, but I guess I never really put too much thought into like who gets a monthly period. You know about cats and dogs and heat, but that's not a once a month thing. I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. Maisha was frustrated that those who see the systemic problem of gender bias within medicine couldn't recognize that racial bias, too, is systemic and often compounds the problem. In her own journey as a black woman with endo, she recalls instances where doctors assumed she was seeking opiates, and instances where her pain was ignored. If I'm seen as a woman who's prone to hysteria, and then also a black woman who's not as affected by pain, then obviously if I'm talking about being in pain, then I'm just exaggerating and it can't possibly be that bad. So yeah, there's a lot about endometriosis in here, and this is just, it's so heartbreaking. You know, women aren't taken seriously, and black women really, really aren't taken seriously when it comes to doctors listening to them. And yeah, I'm glad that she touched on that in here, because we can't talk about these subjects and ignore that huge fact. Like, it breaks my heart to know how many people have suffered and not been taken seriously because of their gender, because of their race, because of their sex. It's, I don't know, we can talk about how like there's equality now, and I'm sure I'm gonna get misogynists in the comments saying like, what are you talking about, we're not equal. Yeah, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like trying to talk to a doctor and be taken seriously. I was going through like having really bad headaches and migraines, and I went to a neurologist, and he said, well, you're a girl and girls just get headaches. Like, that's just a very common thing, that girls get headaches. And, you know, gave me some pills to take if I got a really bad headache and sent me on my way. And I think about that a lot. Okay, so there's this person, Corey. His experiences led him to believe that the numbers of trans and non-binary people with endo are likely far higher than documented, and that the compounding barriers of having a stigmatized women's disease and not identifying as a woman conspire to keep them silent. Continuing to speak about endometriosis as a women's disease to him obscures the reality of this condition and makes the trans and non-binary people who suffer invisible. Breast cancer happens to men, says Corey. I just don't think it should be gendered. Sorry, I forgot to mention non-binary people at the beginning. But yeah, this breast cancer happens to men. I've always thought that. I really didn't like that campaign, the Save the Tatas thing. Because I was like, but people with boobs aren't the only ones getting breast cancer. And also, like, how about save the people who have breast cancer? It was just I get that they were like trying to get it out there, and making a very like shocking ad campaign was the way to do that, I guess. But that never sat right with me. Money. Is money the last name of a person? Yeah, okay. So money framed intersex surgeries as a way for medicine to correct nature's error, the same language Jorgensen had used to describe her condition. The key distinction was that in this case, the infants had no choice in the matter. Meanwhile, parents who agreed to surgery were often ill-informed and in shock. Today, many intersex activists hope to bar all medically unnecessary surgery until after puberty, when the patient is old enough to decide what, if anything, they would like done to their body. It says the main difference between genital surgeries is in the transgender community. In the transgender community and the intersex community is like the difference between birth control and sterilization. It lies in the agency of the person undergoing the procedure. So yeah, I think of that with all of the debates going on, all the transphobia that's happening in this country and around the world. I think about intersex issues a lot and how that is never brought up. And there are people who are often forced at birth to like grow up as one gender that might not fit them, and they are sometimes forced into surgery that they obviously can't consent to make them conform to that gender. And then this causes so many issues down the line because maybe the parents didn't make the right choice for them. And yeah, that's just never talked about, and I'm not sure why. What does that say? Oh. This is right in the afterword. Beau's story made something clear to me. Anatomical knowledge doesn't stay within the academy. It radiates out along the nerve centers of society, through medicine, politics, and culture. It is one thing to say that shoddy science has led to incomplete textbooks and insufficient medical education. It is another to sit across from someone whose body, whose life has been shaped by cultural notions of what a woman is and should be, and what medical interventions are appropriate to make her fit that mold. Beau helped me see what I could not, that the beliefs we share as a society about sex and gender harm all bodies. Culture and medicine shapes bodies. Boom. So I found this very interesting, very informative. Definitely like the first couple of chapters were the most interesting to me because I have always had a big interest in sexuality, in you know, what gets people going, like, and I really love like finding things that were written hundreds of years ago about this subject, you know, because it was so scandalous, especially like, you know, my favorite time period, the Victorian era, that was when it was like really hard to write about sex and desire, but they still did it. So I like that this book shows these body parts that so many of us have, as parts that are not just for one thing, which history has always told us this is what we're for. We're supposed to just pop out babies and that is it. Like that's what we are for. You know, as a person, like that's all I'm supposed to do. And the rest of the time just be a nice soft little wife. As pleasant as a dog. So this felt like a very empowering read, and I really recommend it to everybody. Even if you do not have these body parts, I think it could only be good for you to be educated about them. So, on that note, that's all I've got for you today. If you have any other interesting biology texts that you could recommend, let me know, because like biology writing, science writing can tend to be very dry and boring and difficult to get through. So I need books like this and like The Body by Bill Bryson, where you get so many anecdotes and you get the author like having interviews with these specialists, you know, talking to them, giving us a picture of who they are. I need that kind of setting and characterization and almost like making it feel like a novel or something, for me to really get into it. I like hearing the stories of the real people, not just the, you know, cut and dry, this is what's going on in the body. I want to hear about the people who made these discoveries. So more books like that. And also, yeah, do you have any books that are similar to this? This subject matter. You know, I'd like to learn more about my anatomy. I just find it fascinating. Like, how is all that going on in there? It never stops blowing my mind. So until next time, happy reading.